Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. We are here on Tuesday, June 29th. A happy holiday weekend in advance to everyone here. Michael Beller, Jake Seeley, Brandon Funston, going to be talking about backfields for the most part on this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. Last week, we talked about some of the more confounding wide receiver situations. This week, we talk about backfields, and it's really a ton of fun at this position, right, guys? I mean, do we want to get in on the zero RB discourse that has been just dominating the fantasy football world over the last couple of weeks? Do we want to get into that pedantic sphere of our little corner of the universe, or can we just take a pass on that?
And take a pass. I already covered in the mailbag. It's bullshit.
Wow. It's coming in hot to start, Jake. I like it. I was just excited to talk about this Texans backfield for a little bit. Let's just really let it breathe a little bit today. What do you think?
Right? Should we just do that? Should we just do like 40 minutes on the Texans and then get out of here? 20 minutes specifically on Mark Ingram and what he brings to the Houston offense?
I would do it if we just decided if we did it that we wouldn't have to talk about them ever again until September.
Just rip the Band-Aid of the Houston Texans offense right off here on this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. We are not going to do that. We are going to talk about the Houston Texans among some other backfields. And we're also going to dive into some rule wrinkles, things like that. And, of course, you know, we can't not get things started without doing a Guess That Player. We've been having so much fun with it the last few weeks. So we are going to do one more round of Guess That Player here on this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. We're going to start right there, guys. Clue number one for Guess That Player on this episode. Going quarterback. We haven't done a quarterback yet. We've done some wide receivers. We've done a running back. Haven't done a quarterback yet. So first clue. I am one of 6 quarterbacks who has 2 wide receivers among the top 24 in ADP for the 2021 season. Oh, Jake already knows who it is.
No, just
Mr.
because
Tough.
I have a feeling where your mind would go when you start with that, and I can think of most of these, and I just have a feeling where you're going. We'll see if I'm right.
All right. Write it down, actually. Write it down right now so you can hold it up at the end of the show when we get to clues 2 and 3. But that's first clue. Just have it abbreviated here on the screen. But there are 6 quarterbacks who have 2 wide receivers among the top 24 in ADP. This guy who we're talking about here today is one of them. And with that, let's start talking about these running backs. What we're going to do here is we're going to focus on new look backfields that are going to have some sort of split. Maybe it's 2 guys involved, maybe it's 3 guys involved, and it's new look backfields. We're not going to get into Baltimore with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. We already have a feel, sort of how that's going to go. But these are totally new look, new pairings, new trios, whatever the case might be. And we're just going to ruminate on how these ones might play out. The first one that I want to get into is Las Vegas, where the Raiders made, I think, what all of us were surprised by in the offseason acquisition, bringing in Kenyan Drake, pairing him with Josh Jacobs. Funston, I want to say you are the fantasy industry's biggest Josh Jacobs supporter. So we're going to go to you first on this one. What do you do with Josh? And what do you do with Kenyan Drake, for that matter? These guys have, I think, relatively interesting ADPs for both of them. NFFC ADP over the last 2 weeks is filtered for just June 15th through today. 42.86 for Josh Jacobs, 98.39 for Kenyan Drake. Jacobs, I think, is the more interesting one because he's the more expensive one. So how do you treat Josh Jacobs with Kenyan Drake in that backfield now?
Yeah, so, I mean, you're doing the overall ADP, and I think it matters, you know, kind of where he lands at the running back position. I was looking at NFC data. You know, he's about RB21. I think the Kenyan Drake signing is fair that he drops. I mean, obviously, he's giving up more touches this year than he would have to Devontae Booker if Booker was still there, or Jalen Richard if it was Jalen Richard. Obviously, there's a little bit more of a meaningful split here. But this is an offense that had a backfield that touched the ball 9 less times than the Cleveland Browns last year. And Nick Chubb is going solidified in the top 10, and Kareem Hunt's going about where Josh Jacobs is going now. And I just think that the market overcorrected for the Kenyan Drake signing, that Jacobs is still going to have, you know, the ability to go somewhere between 250 and 300 touches, and Kenyan Drake can push, you know, somewhere in the 150 to 200 touches, and Josh Jacobs can still be a potential top 15, a mid-level RB2, whereas everybody in the ADP right now is kind of viewing him as a back-end RB2, and I just think people are overreacting a little bit to Kenyan Drake. So I know Jake you're probably a little bit less bullish than I am on Josh Jacobs. So feel free to counter on that. But I just think there's still going to be plenty of opportunity for Josh Jacobs, and he's, the whole idea that he can move the needle in terms of receptions is done. I mean, I get that, but that just makes him Nick Chubb. It makes him Derrick Henry. It doesn't make him on a level and overall, but it makes him in the same kind of, you're looking at him with the same kind of lens as those kind of guys that don't really bring a whole lot of upside in the passing game.
Yeah, well, can we get live show sidebar here? I don't think we should be, honestly, like, just tell me, I can get outvoted. I don't think we should be using NFFC, honestly, because that's what not most people are drafting against. I think that's the second thing we should go to. That's like, hey, look at what the high stakes, what?
It's got the most drafts, though. It's got the most data available.
Not while you're talking about if you had the fantasy football calculator, the one that I sent, the Yahoo fan tracks and calculator.
Yeah, but how many
combined.
people? There aren't a ton of drafts happening there yet. We'll go to that when we get a little more data, when we get more drafts happening on those sites. But
they wait until they have a couple thousand.
Well, so I'm looking at the month of June
because here's the point.
Okay, go ahead.
Because here's my point, is what Brandon is talking about, because the average everyman, and that's not disrespectful, but there aren't even what we're talking to here on a fantasy football show. I don't play in high stakes because I don't want to drop that kind of money on fantasy football, like maybe fantasy baseball, because it's more in my control, but I'm not going to put that. It's just like we're talking to 1% of the people that go to those drafts. And that's why I'm saying that. So if, like, you use the one that I sent you guys last night, for what Brandon's talking about, Josh Jacobs is ahead in RB2. He's 14th at running back overall, 27th overall. And I think that's more indicative of how the common man feels, and like the average, like us. Like, that's actually, if you ask me off the top of my head, where do you think Jacobs should be? I'm with you, Brandon. I think that's a little high. I'd put him behind Dobbins, right behind him. You guys know that. I would take Najee Harris in front of him. I'd probably go Chris Carson because his only issue is health. But that really moves him down to what your point was, Brandon, is a mid RB2. I think mid RB2 is fine. I think Kenyan Drake is more of his backup than his complement. I think he could see some passing game work, but everybody's dismissing the facts. Jalen Richard's still there. I would have been concerned about Josh Jacobs in the passing game, even if they didn't add Kenyan Drake, because they refused to use Josh Jacobs in the passing game. So if anything, maybe just reference both. How about that? Yeah. Like, we could just reference both, just because it kind of gives you
combine them, because that's where I have Josh Jacobs ranked as the 17th at RB, which is really kind of a combination of the two. Like the
right.
average.
Well, no, I think it's smart, because what you're saying, Beller, is like, yeah, there are more, and again, that's where the high stakes guys are trying to think ahead and get ahead of the pack. But this will kind of give you at least both sides of it. So we'll just bring up both. I don't say dismiss either one.
We can start looking at both. I just wanted to, with it being as early still in the fantasy football calendar as it is, I just wanted to have the most entry points, the most data points that we could.
And that's fine.
Have.
I just feel like that's not. I don't feel like Josh Jacobs is really going that low. In honestly, like in like your normal drafts, even the couple magazine mocks I've done, he hasn't fallen that far.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think that I do agree with you that you're probably going to see him go a little bit higher in a standard draft. But just good to think about him and just understand that where things could be headed with Kenyan Drake taking some sort of bite out of that backfield. And, we used up a lot of the time we had allotted for the Vegas backfield to talk about ADP favorability. So we're going to move on to the next backfield, but maybe we'll get back to those guys as we go on through the show. Maybe there'll be some references to them. I actually want to talk about the Jets, because they have one of the largest spreads between their first back who is selected and their second back who's selected. And Michael Salfino wrote an interesting piece for us looking at that and using that sort of data of where RB1 for a team is selected versus where RB2, and can we find value there? And so I'm just going to go to NFFC just because I already have it written down off the top of my head. Michael Carter in NFFC drafts is just barely inside the top 80 by ADP. You have to go 100 picks later to find Tevin Coleman. And I know the spread's not going to be as wide when we factor in Yahoo and we factor in Fantrax, but the main point here is it's a big gap between Michael Carter, the rookie, and Tevin Coleman coming over to the Jets. So the question here, Jake, is Michael Carter the man for the Jets? Is there some sneaky value in him where you're seeing him go right now in early drafts?
You already know this. We already did this post-draft, and you know how much I like Michael Carter, and the fact that one of the things people like to go back to that conversation which we had, if people didn't listen to those shows, is that Michael Carter kind of partly was overshadowed because of how good Javonte Williams was. People don't realize the numbers that Michael Carter put up on his own, where even if you just took out Javonte Williams and just Michael Carter didn't do anything more than he did, a lot more people would have been talking about him just as a whole. And if you watched him play, and the comparison I made is he's not a bell cow like Williams. You don't want him touching the ball 20, 25 times a game. You're going to get him killed. There's some running backs also from an efficiency standpoint when we were pounding the table forever for Lamar Miller to get more touches with the Dolphins, and he leaves the Dolphins and he's basically putting up the same numbers on more touches because he got less efficient. Michael Carter has the upside of Austin Eckler, and that's the fact. That's the truth. That's how talented he is. And if you look at Austin Eckler, barely ever gets to 20 touches in a game. He doesn't need it. And I know the Jets aren't the Chargers offense, but a great offensive line now. Like, this has been a steadily improving offensive line that was already probably top 10. And then you add Moses, and now you say, like, wow, they just have depth on top of it. Why I said maybe not is because I'm looking at the average ADP over here, and Michael Carter is almost 80 picks difference from Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman's free right now. So as much as I'm drafting Carter, and I think Carter is still way undervalued in drafts, like, I'm willing to take Carter in the 7th, 8th round. And if people start jumping in the 7th, 8th round, I'll jump to the 6th or 7th. I'll put it this way. The break point for me for Michael Carter is probably the 5th round. I think he's going to be an RB2 as a rookie. That being said, I'm also drafting Tevin Coleman whether or not I have Carter, because in case I'm wrong, in case Tevin Coleman shows up and shows out in the preseason and he has the job to start because he is the vet, he's free. He can be your last pick, and then you almost hedge your bet, or even if you don't own Carter, you take that flyer.
Yeah, I'm every bit as bullish as Jake on Michael Carter. I've been getting him at RB 26, and I feel totally fine in drafts taking him right there. And I'm expecting at some point I'm going to have to start going a little bit higher. But, you start getting into Travis Etienne, James Robinson, James Conner, Chase Edmonds, Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette. Like, I just would say, you know what? I'm going to bet on Carter getting at least the touches that Jake's talking about, enough that he can be, max efficient, and it's there for him. And I loved his film. For as small as he is, he's amazing between the tackles, amazing vision, and just a slippery ability to get through the weeds. And I just think, Tevin Coleman's a guy at this point. He's just he's somebody who has some institutional knowledge that they're able to bring in. But once Michael Carter is comfortable, I think they're going to give him the touches that he needs. And it's not going to be 20 touches per game, but if he gets to 15, taking him at RB 26 is going to be a steal in my mind.
Yeah, Tevin Coleman, totally useful for a real-life team in a real-life context, right? He's got plenty of value in that way, not in the way we really talk about in the fantasy world. Michael Carter, someone who could take over that job and really run away with it. And just to give you a sense with what Jake said, with the NFFC being the high-stakes market and how that's going to differ from just your regular drafts, you do have Michael Carter down, around pick number 130 by ADP when you're factoring in Yahoo Fantrax, way up around pick number 80 when you're just looking at NFFC. So think about the direction that Michael Carter could be headed in as we get really into draft season. Here you go, Funston. Houston Texans. Look at this team. David Johnson, Phillip Lindsay, Mark Ingram, Rex Burkhead is on the roster right now, too. Jake's pretty much got this right. But, David Johnson's going in so comfortably inside the top 100. Phillip Lindsay's going just barely outside, but maybe not just barely, but a round or so outside the top 100. So we're talking about guys who are 100% drafted, and in Johnson's case, we're like a 6th, early 7th round pick in 12-team leagues. I mean, is this just a stay away backfield for you, Funston? Is that why you lob the derision at it that you do?
I just don't know what they're doing. I mean, they brought in Mark Ingram, then they felt like they had to go out and bring in Rex Burkhead as well. Like, they're just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. But I think what ultimately ends up happening is if David Johnson stays healthy, he's the guy that you want, and he might end up being a value because if you think about how this team is set up, they're going to probably be terrible on defense again, and they're going to want the guy out there that's going to be most proficient in the passing game, which is David Johnson. That's been a problem with Phillip Lindsay. He can't get into the game on passing downs, So are they going to be in position where Phillip Lindsay can really make a hard run at David Johnson? I don't know with the way this team is constructed if that's going to work out very well. So I'm sort of like, okay, I don't really want to touch this backfield, but I'd be in on David Johnson at, what's his ADP right now? It's
Got him,
RB40,
like,
RB40 and
RB 31.
I mean, I think with his receptions upside, I think he could be a steal there at 40. So
his ADP and when you're throwing in everything is just outside the top 80. And so I ask you, Jake, I mean, can we buy into that? As ugly as things were for him last year, he was above 1,000 yards from scrimmage. He scored 9 touchdowns. He did that in 12 games. Obviously, we don't know what the case is going to be with Deshaun Watson, and if he's not there, that's going to change the outlook for the Houston offense in a big way. But, I mean, at that ADP, if you're sitting there thinking pick number 80 or so, I've got to get in on David Johnson if I want him, can you buy into that?
Maybe a pick 80, but there's running backs behind him I'd still take. Right now, Etienne still going. And again, I'm looking at the consensus versus the NFFC, but Etienne is behind him. You know what? I'd honestly, as much as we've been annoyed, and this is the Patriots backfield now, but the one thing about the Patriots backfield is that one's starting to clear up. I'd rather take a chance that Damian Harris is finally a guy in that not newish offense, but kind of like it's not the same as like James White, Damian Harris. Sonny Michel looks like he could be done for at this point with how he's playing last year. But of course, Sonny Michel in the mix would change things. If Stevenson gets touches, that could be the Patriots all over again. But at least I know Damian Harris has more juice left in his legs. David Johnson, with all these other pieces, just feels like they know he can't handle 20 touches. He's broken at this point. Like he's Todd Gurley, honestly. Like what's the difference between David Johnson and Todd Gurley? David Johnson has a job. That's really the difference right now. So at 80, I'd be like, okay, fine. Fortunately, the way that I draft, to go back to what you started the show with, is bell cow elite running back, whatever you want to call it. I've never been at the situation where it's like, man, I got to get a running back. I better take David Johnson here. I'm usually out at this range of all these guys, of the Tampa Bay guys that I just mentioned, the Patriot guys in Arizona. And I know we're going to talk about some of these, but I'd just rather be out. And if you're going to go the cheapest, like we used to with the Patriots, take Phillip Lindsay. You're right, Brandon. But the one thing we know about Phillip Lindsay is before Denver started baffling us, he was used in the passing game. He was doing fine. He was good in the passing game. And then Denver just stopped. So I wouldn't be shocked if Phillip Lindsay is the most consistent, because like similar to James White when he was with the Patriots, but a few more rushes, a little fewer pass attempts. Receiving pass attempts.
All right, guys. I want to take us over to the Jaguars for a second because I think this one's going to be really interesting. And Jake, this is actually why I forgot about this, but this is why I like using the NFFC data, because the one you sent us pulls in NFFC data going all the way back to February. And so they have a ADP for Travis Etienne of 101. And obviously that's nowhere near what his actual
101.
ADP
I have
is
81. Which one are you looking at? Are you on half point PPR?
Yeah, I'm in half PPR.
Click on
Either
the
way,
backs.
we know 81,
running
101, it's going to be much higher than that. It's going to be much higher than that. And so if you're just looking at the last 2 weeks on NFFC, you've got Travis Etienne at 45.5, higher than Chris Godwin, higher than Deontay Johnson, higher than Lamar Jackson. You've got James Robinson sitting at 61.5. So still not like you're getting a huge discount. Obviously a big discount on where he was a year ago and what he produced a year ago, but we know what Etienne's going to bring to that offense, and especially the presence he's going to bring to that offense. So still a 5th-round pick, a late 5th, very early 6th on James Robinson. Doesn't feel like much of a discount. Like when I look at that, Jake, I see two guys who I feel are maybe both a tiny bit overvalued. What do you look at when you see those two ADPs attached to these guys?
Yeah, a bit overvalued, of course. We talked about it during the rookie time and said that Etienne is a lesser version of Alvin Kamara, but James Robinson's a better version of Latavius Murray. So, you can get RB3, potential RB2, low-end RB2 value out of James Robinson, and Etienne mid to high RB2, but you're paying that price right now. So, I don't even say it's necessarily like overpriced as it is maybe properly priced. And it's a reasonable cost, but you're kind of not getting any discount for the risk associated. There is risk here. We should understand. I think everybody understands there's risk. Mm-hmm. There's risk with the running backs, that Robinson is the lead and Etienne is what Urban said after the draft, which he would be bonkers to do what he did in the draft and take a guy who's only going to be the pass catching third down specialist. Yes. But let's understand that that's a possibility. Like, it's a possibility that Etienne is Kamara-like and James Robinson barely sees the field like Latavius Murray unless Etienne gets hurt. There's a possibility that they both just cannibalize each other and they're low-end RB2s together, fringe RB3s, and the volume's all in the passing game. So there should be a lower cost for the risk where it is. It's a reasonable cost. I haven't been drafting either of them, and I like both of them.
I'm kind of the same. I won't. I'm sure I will not have them on. I mean, at Etienne priced at RB22 right now in the month of June on NFC. Like, I can't pay that price for the unknown of what Jake said, that he could just be a third down guy. And look at Urban Meyer's going out there and saying Trevor Lawrence isn't ready yet. I mean, the guy's crazy. Who knows what the Urban Meyer experience is going to be? And I'm not going to pay at the top end of potential for Etienne, given all the unknowns that are going on in Jacksonville right now.
It's not like they've just got some nobody backing up Trevor Lawrence, right? I mean, it's not like there's just some no-name dude who can't go out there and move the ball and win some games. So
teeing you up, Jake. He's teeing you up. Just going to sit quiet on that one.
At Urban Meyer experience. I think it's going to be a fun one. But yeah, I mean, right now, if these two guys go into draft season in earnest where they are, I got a feeling that I'm going to have plenty of DJ Chark, plenty of Marvin Jones, and really nothing of this backfield. Denver might be a little bit different. What's up?
Go ahead. You said and Ernest. I'm joking.
In
Ernest
earnest.
Remember Ernest
In earnest, Jake.
Hey, Ernest Graham was hot stuff for about 6 weeks.
You know what's going to be hot stuff? The Denver backfield. I think that's going to be hot stuff. We talked about this a little bit last week in a bonus episode we did for Apple, but here I want to talk about it in a more wider audience. We've got Melvin Gordon. We've got Javonte Williams. This is an interesting split to me, you guys. I think that this is one with where you're seeing these two guys go about a round later from Etienne for Javonte Williams, about 2 rounds later for Melvin Gordon compared with James Robinson. Like, this is where I can start getting on board with what we expect to be a split backfield, especially with Melvin Gordon down at that 81.5 spot. I mean, I don't know if that's going to really be too bad of a place to take him, even understanding what Javonte Williams is going to bring to the table here. What do you look at with this Broncos backfield, Brandon?
I look at, I mean, I'm getting a lot of Javonte Williams. I'm buying in. Look at, I saw what happened in Baltimore last year with Mark Ingram. These guys can age out as running backs quickly.
Sure.
I will say, though, for Denver to move up and get Javonte Williams and use a premium top of end round 2 pick, almost feels like they maybe should have kept Phillip Lindsay and cut Melvin Gordon at some point. If you're looking at salary cap and all that stuff, ramifications. But I think it's just a matter of time. The Jaws music is in Melvin Gordon's ear on Javonte Williams, and there's going to be a change in the guard at some point this year. Sounds like, by all accounts, that Javonte Williams is looking great. And this is no diss on Melvin Gordon. I'm sure these guys can actually work decently and share a load decently, but I just think at some point we're going to see Melvin Gordon kind of age out as into sort of a backup role in 2021.
He might already know that, and that's why. So I put this out there when we talked about it, and I said I thought Javonte Williams would be the guy by week 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there. Third of the way, halfway through the season, and because he is the better running back, just overall talent standpoint. Last year was only the second time that Melvin Gordon had averaged over 4 yards per carry, which I know that yards per carry stat. I'm the one who always says it's a fake-ish stat. You got to dig deeper, and part of the reason was because of their offensive line is still pretty strong, but that's a testament to Melvin Gordon. Still, like when you have that many years of not being able to get 4 yards of carry, that does carry some weight. And I think Melvin Gordon saw this on top of what you just said, Brandon. You don't move up. It's not just they took a premium pick on a running back. They moved up, which tells me they wanted Williams, which tells me they're ready for Melvin Gordon to be done, which Melvin Gordon, in all intents and purposes, is done after this year anyway with the Broncos. Right. So I think that if he's bitter, he's just opening the door. If the door is already open, but he's just pushing it further open for Javonte Williams to continue to show up in OTAs, then training camp. And the longer Melvin Gordon sits out, I think you move up the week that Javonte Williams takes over. Yeah.
It remains one of the odder signings, I feel like, over the last few years that they went out and did what they did to get Melvin Gordon a year ago after the success that Phillip Lindsay had already had. And now we see it again, trading up with that to use a premium pick on Javonte Williams. It feels like the Broncos wouldn't mind having a mulligan on that entire Melvin Gordon signing to begin with. But that's our first look at the split backfields. I'm going to kick you guys out of here, and I'm going to talk to everyone about HelloFresh. Hello, everyone. HelloFresh cuts out stressful meal planning and grocery store trips so you can enjoy cooking and get dinner on the table just about 30 minutes or less. You can try HelloFresh quick and easy meals 15 to 20-minute dinners. How quick is that? Breakfast on the go and more easy options. Perfect for anyone's busy lifestyle. 50 menu and market items each week, including ready-to-eat salads, sandwiches, and soups. And right now, if you go to HelloFresh.com/fantasy14, use the code fantasy14, you can get up to 14 free meals plus free shipping. Again, that is HelloFresh.com/fantasy14. Use the code fantasy14, up to 14 free meals plus free shipping. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. All right, guys, we'll bring you back in here. Let's try to get through these ones quickly because we got a lot of stuff I still want to talk about here. I want to go to Detroit where we find DeAndre Swift still going late second, early third round. We've got Jamaal Williams there. Jamaal Williams' lot in life seems to be to muck up NFC North running back situations. He did it in Green Bay. Now he's doing it in Detroit. We know, I think, basically what to expect from Jamaal Williams, but with DeAndre Swift going where he is still going, my question to you, and Brandon, why don't you take this one first? Is DeAndre Swift overvalued right now?
This is something where the Sharks and Joe Public are aligned. I see Swift as like RB16 in both lists. I'm down at like RB19 or 20. Like I'm the one who will always say bet on talent, and Jamaal Williams is a fine running back, and he's the kind of guy. Real life guy. But like ultimately, and especially this comes back to like the David Johnson thing. Like what's the Lions situation going to be? They're going to be in a position to move the chains with Jamaal Williams, or are they going to want DeAndre Swift on the field a lot in the passing game and in Jared Goff's kind of wheelhouse, short and intermediate range? So I just think DeAndre Swift's going to be the better back by a long shot, but I do think Jamaal Williams is going to be a bigger thing than I initially thought when he went there. So I've moved DeAndre Swift down a few spots in my running back ranks.
Yeah, we can, like you said, we could do it quickly on this one because I've ad nauseum talked about this. He's in my breakout article and still said that he's overvalued at the same time. He can be both. He can have have a breakout season, but the biggest issue is like not only the people who talk about, oh, they're going to be passing a lot. Well, guess what? Jamaal Williams is one of the best pass blocking running backs in the league, which doesn't mean that DeAndre Swift is going to always be the guy. So, and Jared Goff dead last the last 2 years throwing to running backs. So. Again, I'm sure he can do better too, Jared Goff, but, RB 18, 17, 19 in that range is a fair spot of where he should be.
And can I say something really quick? I think the running back position through at least 20 is really strong. And in that 20 or so, there's not a ton of guys that are giving away a lot of carries. So the guys that do, they have to move down. Like it's really hard when it becomes when you're looking at volume to take a guy like DeAndre Swift and put him ahead of someone like David Montgomery, who is going to get the ball a ton, So it's no slide on Swift or his talent.
You should have said Mike Davis so you could have transitioned to the next one.
That's exactly what I was going to do.
Great call. I have Mike Davis.
That's exactly what I was going to do. Funston, why don't you take this one away? Because is Mike Davis in that group? I mean, can he run away with the job in Atlanta? And what I want to put to you guys is that in my mind, I sort of think of Mike Davis. I mean, we got Quadri Allison behind him. I think of him as, maybe this year's James Robinson. And I think when we look for guys like that, like we try to follow the archetype too closely. I don't think this year's James Robinson needs to necessarily be some undrafted free agent rookie who, runs away with his team's job. And why I think Mike Davis is sort of a this year James Robinson is because he could be on a bad team. And we are often afraid of running backs on bad teams. But James Robinson just had the RB7 season on a team that went 1-15. So it's doable to have a very good season as a running back on a bad team. I feel like Mike Davis can maybe be that guy. He showed us a whole lot in Carolina filling in for Christian McCaffrey. Is he in that top 20 solid group for you, Funston?
Yeah, the reason why he's not James Robinson, because the secret's out on Mike Davis. And James Robinson, you could have picked up in week 1 in a lot of leagues. People weren't sure. I think everybody's in on Mike Davis. I mean, Quadri Allison, Jake likes Javian Hawkins. I like him, but he's an undrafted rookie. And we're talking about, speculating that he could have a big role in the passing game, potentially be like a Nyheim Hines or something. But really, it's Mike Davis or bust in this backfield. I mean, Quadri Allison's been around. Yeah. They were willing to go with arthritic knee Todd Gurley and kick the tires on him one last time over Quadri Allison. If they had a whole lot of faith in him as a main guy, they would have showed it a long time ago. So I just think this is Mike Davis's. He's going to be, if he can stay healthy, one of the bigger workloads in the NFL. And so he's not James Robinson because he's already pushing his way into the top 20 at the RB position.
Yeah, he should be in the top 20. Really, we've also seen he's good pass catcher. We just saw that last year, stepping in Christian McCaffrey's role. So you don't have to worry about him coming off the field that much. As much as, yeah, I can like Javian Hawkins. Let's be honest, like as much as I can like him, as much as the next guy, undrafted free agent is what Brandon said. There's no guarantee he's even on this team. Like that's still out there to be done because there's, they brought in Cordell Patterson to mix into there. We'll have to decide to go with Caleb Huntley instead, who was also an undrafted free agent, and decide to go with more of the, between the tackles type of guy, decent pass catcher, but not Javian Hawkins. So still not a factor. Mike Davis can be a 20-touch guy in this offense. Ito Smith is gone. Brian Hill's gone. She still doesn't even have a team. So, yeah, Mike Davis right now. But Brandon mentioned the one thing I did want to say is I can see Mike Davis's cost getting too high because the industry keeps pounding the table saying this is disrespectful. This is disrespectful. If he starts pushing top 16, 15 running backs, now, again, similar to what we were talking about the Jags backs, is you're not leaving any room for the risk. There's still risk because Mike Davis has only been the guy for essentially a half season. What if Mike Davis is just not a one-year wonder, but fell into a great situation and this isn't as good for him? Like being a bell cow, he's not good at.
Really quick before we move on to the next backfield, who rises more between now and August 29th? Mike Davis or Myles Gaskin?
Mike Davis.
Well, where is Mike Davis at right now? Because I'm sorry, this is not really quick, but like,
yeah,
I mean, I'm just looking at NFC data.
Davis
is behind.
in front of him.
Yeah. I'm with Jake. Yeah, if Davis is behind Gaskin, then I'm down with that.
Davis is going to leapfrog Gaskin.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to write that down. I'm keeping a running total of these things. I'm going to write that one down for sure. Davis jumps Myles Gaskin according to Jake.
Trevor Lawrence, number one quarterback overall. Period.
Trevor Lawrence, number one overall quarterback, period.
He's not ready yet, Jake.
Etching that one in stone. How about Arizona? Chase Edmonds, James Conner. Here's the breakdown with these two guys. In the everyman ADP, we've got Chase Edmonds, 61 by ADP. James Conner, 91 by ADP.
Dumb.
That's all I need to know. That's all I need to know right there. I am in on Conner and out on Edmonds pretty easily. Where are you guys at on this? Jake, take it first.
It should be reversed. Period. It should be reversed, and with not a significant gap, but a decent gap. Chase Edmonds, this is another one where you feel like we're doing the Kristen Michael. Sorry, Brandon, but they're like that, and like the Jeff Janices of the world, like all these like guys where people get infatuated
Andre
with them
Ellington.
and see the potential that they have. And look, I was a Chase Edmonds supporter as well. I never thought, I will say this, you can go back and look. I never thought he should be the lead of a backfield. I thought he could make a nice timeshare in a 60-40 split. Similar to Lindsay back when he was an RB2 splitting the backfield in Denver. Like that's the role of Chase Edmonds. He's not the lead guy. James Conner, the only reason that Chase Edmonds is getting the love is because he's performed some games and people are somehow playing this like mind game of backing out all the bad games he had. And then want him to have the backfield because James Conner's been hurt so much. Yes, James Conner's likelihood of staying healthy for all 17 games is very slim. I would have made the same bet on him staying healthy as I would for Todd Gurley last year. Probably you got to give me 100-1 odds. But that being said, that's why you draft Chase Edmonds as one of the best backups, not the lead guy. That's the problem. He's being drafted as the lead guy.
Yeah, and I think that when people think about Chase Edmonds, they think, oh, he's going to catch a ton of passes too, And this was a team that was right in the middle of the NFL in terms of throwing to the running back position, and now you add AJ Green and Rondale Moore, and they're probably not going to go up in that department. So there's not as big a pie in the passing game for Chase Edmonds as I think people are sort of thinking there is. And then if you're not getting the love that you're kind of secondary to James Conner in the running game, as Jake said, these guys probably at best should be even. They shouldn't be like a big disparity between either one of them.
2.5 round disparity in 12-team leagues between these two guys, and that feels like too much. And another point on the Chase Edmonds as receiver, probably one of the two quarterbacks who takes away the most dump-off passes to his running backs by virtue of the way he runs himself. I would say Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson are the two guys who are at the top of that list. So I think there's plenty of good reason for concern for Chase Edmonds if we are still going to be treating him as a top 65, 70, even a top 80 pick when draft season really does roll around. One more backfield. Let's try to get through this one pretty quickly. San Francisco 49ers. Do you guys know that Trey Sermon has a higher ADP, at least in NFFC? Let me pull up the everyman ADP, but Trey Sermon's got a higher ADP than Raheem Mostert. that's true?
Shiny
What do you
new
think about
toy.
that?
Shiny new toy syndrome.
That's you lost all. This is why you draft early in other leagues too, is because you could have had a great discount on Sermon, and now it's essentially gone. It was ruined for two reasons. It's because Mostert's missing time still and not 100%, and then the injury to Jeff Wilson. So what happens? You have the rookie. Like again, something else I said back then is whether or not it was going to be from day one. Trey Sermon is the most talented running back in this backfield. If everybody's healthy, he's the most talented running back. Now, whether or not that meant he was going to get the most touches from day one probably wasn't going to happen. But if you give me a most talented, Brandon said earlier, I'm going to chase talent. I was going to chase talent, and I was drafting Trey Sermon everywhere late. And dynasty drafts, he was falling to the 3rd round, sometimes the 4th. Now he's in the 2nd, pushing the 1st round in dynasty drafts. You just mentioned his ADP overall because people see it. People see the talent. And what do I always keep saying? Kyle Shanahan has the Midas touch of running backs. He makes everybody gold. True. If Mostert's ready week 1, I will again say this. Mostert, it's the guy. He has to get past Mostert. But Mostert's inability to stay healthy himself, it's the next man up situation. Jeff Wilson is out. Who's the next man up? Trey Sermon away Gallman? It's Trey Sermon. And I even said this. There's a non-zero chance that Elijah Mitchell for 2 or 3 weeks ends up the most valuable 49ers running back just because of attrition of who's left standing.
Yeah, it's such a good, ripe backfield for production that as long I'm fine if Mostert stays healthy and Sermon stays healthy and it's just the two of them. You got 2 guys that are in the 20s in terms of running back production, I think. But the problem is you start getting Wayne Gallman mixed in there. If they start going New England on it, where they're throwing in the 3rd.
What's Trey Lance going to do?
Yeah, or what Trey Lance
Juszczyk's going to get like 2 targets and a touchdown.
Juszczyk's going to have like three. If we simulated this season 1,000 times, Juszczyk would have like 3.3 receiving touchdowns.
Exactly.
100%. I was actually going to pull up to see what my predictions had.
Okay, let's try to do this one actually really quick because it's just popped in my head. We got a lot of things I still want to get to, but if we were in a league that drafted
2.5 go ahead.
2.5. If we were in a league that drafted team running back, where would the 49ers be ranked?
Top 5.
Yeah, maybe top 3, but yeah, they're elite for sure.
Yeah, remarkable that's true, and we're still talking about one individual, maybe not even breaking into the top 20
Shanahan,
here. So that's Kyle Shanahan, the Midas touch for running backs, as you say, Jake. Let's get back to our guess that player. Here is our second clue. Remember, we are talking about a quarterback here, and clue number 2 is of the 6 guys who have 2 wide receivers in the top 24. I am the only one who is not in the top 12. By ADP at the quarterback position. So this quarterback has 2 top 24 wide receivers. 6 quarterbacks fit that. The other 5 are all in the top 12 by ADP. This is the one guy who is not in the top 12 by ADP.
See, I'm not going to change it. I'm throwing my pen over there. So because I think I'm right.
I got mine written down as well.
All right. I love it. Let's
now Barkley's looking over there. She has no idea what I'm doing.
She's just gonna go pick that up and wonder what you're throwing. Why it's not a ball or something.
To my desk.
Before we move on to our next topic, I just wanted to throw this up here. A comment from Brandon right at the top of the show. Not Brandon Funston, but Brandon Bright watching us on YouTube. It says 0 RB is for losers.
Yes, we love you, Brandon.
Keep that in mind as you get ready to draft for yourself. Let's move on to another topic here, something I wanted to talk to you guys about. We always talk about bust, sleepers, risk, reward, whatever the case might be. I think there's a big window, and we don't talk about this enough, of guys who we like, guys who we'll have on our team. But we understand there's a little bit of risk tied to them, maybe more risk than the market is seeing. So let's all go through and name one guy who we have on that list. Jake, you can go first here. Who do you like? But maybe a little bit of risk.
It's just not even so much. It is some risk, but also the price. I just can't do it, especially as top 5, top 6 wide receiver. And again, sorry, Brandon, but I just can't do DK Metcalf. I don't have him anywhere. I don't think I'll have him anywhere. Just going by my projections, I have him at wide receiver 10, which isn't huge drop, but people are drafting him top 5, 6. I've even seen him go high as 3 or 4 sometimes. Depending on if Davante Adams falls in his situation. But I can't do it mostly because the second half of the season, his target volume and share pretty much held steady. He had a game or 2 with double digits, just like the first half of the season. Most of the games were 8 targets. Most of the games, he was still catching just as many. The biggest issue is that yards per air attempt and yards per reception drop dramatically. And I'm not saying DK Metcalf, similar to my argument about Justin Herbert, can't take a step past and adjust to the NFL, which that's what happened. Defenses figured out, look, Seattle's doing their best they can and getting DK Metcalf his best opportunities. And good on Seattle. We've talked about that many times before. But you start rolling that coverage and limiting that, and now you're asking DK Metcalf to be something he's not, the inside route guy, the comebacks, that type of stuff. And I just don't know in this offense that he's not kind of just supplanting Tyler Lockett as the number one, which he already is, where it's, yes, he's a top 10 wide receiver. But the roller coaster ride of getting there, I just can't take him top 5. If you gave him his wide receiver 10, 11, 12, take him all day long. I just can't draft him where he's going.
Yeah, it's amazing watching last year how long it took defenses to figure out Seattle. I mean, Russell Wilson was going over the top to DK Metcalf at will in the first half of the season. Then they just started rolling safeties, deep over the top and making sure that they just took away that deep ball. It's going to be a completely different offense this year, but it's worth saying, it's worth saying that, like, DK Metcalf, I mean, you almost want to see what that means for DK Metcalf and how that kind of transforms his kind of role or whatever. But you're still taking him top 10. It's just, am I willing to take him top 5? Given, when you're taking somebody that high, you don't really want question marks. And there's a little bit of question mark coming in with DK Metcalf. So I get that.
All right, I'm going to go second here. Brandon, you can save yours for third. Who do I like, but a little bit concerned about, and I could see actually not necessarily ending up with a ton of? It's Najee Harris. I think there's some serious risk of the bottom falling out in this Pittsburgh team this season, and that's really what has me most concerned about him. We know that it's not a great offensive line. It wasn't a great offensive line last year. They did add Trey Turner to the offensive line in the offseason, but it still projects probably as a middle-of-the-pack offensive line at best. I know the volume is almost certainly going to be there for Najee Harris in a big way, but I really do think there is some risk in the bottom falling out on this team. I think there's some risk in this being the worst team in the AFC North, and that's something that I'm going to be looking at as I'm rounding up my futures bets for this season. And then what really puts it over the top for me, you guys, is the opportunity cost. In taking Najee Harris asks you to pass on some combination of Cam Akers, Tyreek Hill, Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, who I still love if Aaron Rodgers is still a part of that team, Stephon Diggs, Davante Adams. Like, you're going to be passing on some of those guys to get Najee Harris. You would be able to fill that spot with one of those guys plus another one. And if you take Najee Harris, you're only going to get one of that group. And I just feel like that opportunity cost is a little bit too high. So while I understand the logic for loving Najee Harris, why we're seeing him drafted at the back end of the first or very early in the second round in 12-team leagues, it just feels like there are more risk factors tied to him than that assumes. And for that reason, I find myself very often going in an opposite direction. Jake, would you care to make a counter argument to that?
Well, why? Because I love Najee Harris. What's his RB? What's his RB only ADP?
Well, I was just looking. It's on Joe Public. It's
Joe Public.
Joe Public. It's 19.
What is it in NFFC though?
10.
It is, 10.
Okay.
Yeah, 10.
Well, similar to before, Brandon, I split the difference. I have him at RB 13, and I could be argued as one of the biggest, but obviously I'm not the biggest at ADP wise, but one of the biggest fans. And the one who, as soon as the draft was over, have been saying this a million times over, and I'll continue to say it, is we have year after year after year 2 to 3 running backs who finish as RB1s in bottom 10 offensive lines. We have running backs nowhere near the top RB1 territory who are on top 10 offensive lines. Volume's king. And now you're not wrong to include this, Beller. And we said it at the time, and I've admittedly said it, is like, if you want to split the difference, if you say, I don't want to take Najee Harris, I'd rather take Joe Mixon because I trust the offense more, and you could argue that offensive line is better at this point. That's fine. You're splitting the difference. But if you're going to say, and I know you're not saying this, but if you're saying, I'm not taking Najee Harris because of the offensive line, I'm going to draft Myles Gaskin instead. You're out of your damn mind. He's going to get 300 plus touches. Mike Tomlin loves his bell cow. But even I have nothing but positive things to say about Harris since and before the draft. He's still RB13 for me.
Yeah.
So, Beller, rank Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, and David Montgomery.
Mixon, Harris, Montgomery.
Okay.
There you go.
I want to say Montgomery. Yeah, I want to say Montgomery higher, but I'm very worried about the role Tariq Cohen is going to play as it relates to David Montgomery's fantasy value.
Well, I think they're all similar. Massive volume, Yeah, whether Cohen mixes in or not, it's still shaky offensive lines. Potentially last place teams. So I'm just curious because I think they're all.
Whoa. Would you care to make a bet on that?
The Detroit Lions?
If the Bears finish behind the Lions in the NFC North,
I'll give the Lions a 1.5 over under on wins for the year.
Third place team for Chicago. Sorry.
That would be. I mean, if that was Matt Nagy would never be allowed to set foot in Chicago if the Bears somehow finish behind the Lions in the standings.
Howell or Rattler should start looking at houses in Detroit. That's all I'm saying.
All right, Brandon, why don't you wrap us up here? Who do you got? I like him, but who you got?
Jalen Hurts, and I'm seeing him in NFFC drafts going at 9, and I've been in drafts where people will reach as high as 7. Like I have him ranked 12, and I have him ranked as the last, QB1. But I have kind of like the same doubts that I had with Cam Newton all through his career. Is he's not a great thrower, and it's going to be all about the legs. And what if Philly doesn't like the fact that he's not developing as a passer? I mean, he was the worst among quarterbacks last year in adjusted completion percentage. I wonder about him in a rhythm passing game. I worry about the inexperience of his lead receivers and the lack of size of them, and just all the other issues that Philadelphia had that we expect are just going to go away because a couple offensive linemen are suddenly healthy. Like, I'm out as reaching into the top 10 for him. He'll never fall to me in the 11-12 range. So that's why I'm kind of like, I like him, but I'll never have him. So that's where I'm at.
Let me follow up here really quick. So if you said you had him at QB 12 or QB 13?
QB 12.
So who are the players that you have boosted over him that we're typically seeing go behind him?
I'm bringing up my rankings right now. So I got Brady and Tannehill right ahead of him.
Okay.
And
Jake?
Right, and
No.
Trevor Lawrence, QB 13.
No, Jake? Not feeling that?
No. Well, okay. So projections right now, Tom Brady and Jalen Hurts are separated by 15 fantasy points. We want to talk ADP cost, depending on what you're looking at and what I've seen in some drafts. I'll take Jalen Hurts every single time, but it depends. I think if anything we could agree to is quarterback ADP is almost one of the not most worthless, but it's just going to depend on. It's going to depend on your draft. I've been in drafts where Hurts has gone 3 rounds later. I've been in drafts where he's gone in front of Tom Brady. What it comes down to for me, and this is part of the article if anyone goes to read it, is the breakout quarterbacks. Hurts is my pick. I'm not disagreeing with anything Brandon said. The fact is he was one of the most inaccurate passers last year. He was also in an offense that wasn't built for him. He was also in an offense where his number 1 wide receiver was Travis Fulgham, who I love from ODU. Everybody knows that. But in real life, he's an NFL number 3, probably number 4. Jalen Reagor was miscast outside. Dallas Goedert wasn't healthy for most of the season. Zach Ertz wasn't healthy for most of the season. This just offense was, and the offensive line was on the third string. There was like dudes that people have never even heard of that they were trying to call up. I think that might have played in the XFL. They were trying. I'm getting choked up over here.
Yeah, they're killing you.
For fantasy purposes, what it comes down to, and this is one of the things I said, is you guys know this. I hate the next Josh Allen. I hate that. He's 1 out of 50. He's not the commonality. But Josh Allen was as inaccurate as Hurts was his first season. You build an offense, you get talent around him. And then for fantasy, what I'm going to come down to is the main point here is go back to that article. What did I say? Daniel Jones last year threw 13 touchdowns. Didn't even throw for 3,000 yards. Actually, was it 12 touchdowns? It was something miserable. All you take Daniel Jones' numbers from last year, which wasn't a full season, it was god-awful, and give him 700 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns, he's QB 11. It's fantasy. It's the legs. Unless he loses the job, he's going to finish top 10. Yeah.
We talked about that a little bit, just as like a let's dismiss this topic when they signed Nick Mullins. Right? We read like, could he lose the job? Nick Mullins is semi-competent and has won some games in San Francisco. He's not.
They have Joe
job.
Flacco, so I will say Brandon's not wrong and say like there is a chance where they just decide, look, Hurts isn't our future. We're drafting our quarterback next year. Let's just go to Flacco. I don't think it will happen, but I'm not saying it's an impossibility.
How bad would things have to get for that to happen?
Well, I could see it being like
they couldn't even be run-of-the-mill 4-13 bad. It would have to be ugly Doug Peterson fired midseason bad.
I think it's more like they are slightly competitive, but maybe slightly under 500, and they feel like Jalen Hurts is inaccuracy.
And Hurts is out there throwing 180 yards and 2 picks a game.
Yeah, exactly. The defense is playing its butts off, and they're feeling like, you know what, if we just have a game manager in there, we're probably doing ourselves better. I think that's how it works.
Yeah. I'm already losing my head on head coaches with guys who are getting fired with the the reference there, but it can't happen. So I understand the wariness on Hurts because of how much we're going to have to see him step forward as a passer to really, I think, take off in a way that he's being projected to take off in the fantasy world. Let's get to a few more things here before we wrap up the show. First, let's talk about Credit Karma, you guys. The beginning of any journey can feel daunting. You're not sure where you're heading. You're not sure you're even headed in the right direction. You don't know what to prepare for. But with Credit Karma, you can be more informed about what's ahead. Credit Karma's game-changing technology shows you tailored offers for credit cards and personal loans that you're more likely to be approved for so you can apply with more confidence. They use your credit and other financial information to show you custom recommendations, whether you want cash back, travel rewards, consolidating debt, whatever the case might be. Credit Karma can help you find the offers that fit your goals. Right now, go to creditkarma.com/podcast, just very generic, creditkarma.com/podcast to learn more and find the offers that are tailored just for you. It's creditkarma.com/podcast, or you can see your offers on the Credit Karma app. One more thing to talk about here today before we get to our final segment, and that is our pals at BetMGM. Do you want to get on board with me? Do you want to just go and see what the Steelers' odds to be last in the AFC North might be? Going to be pretty juicy, I think. I don't think you're going to get a lot of people on that. Well, BetMGM has got that for you and a whole lot more. Euro Cup still going on, MLB every day, NBA with the Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals still going on. All of that available to you and more on BetMGM. And if you sign up today with BetMGM, the exclusive betting partner of The Athletic, you'll get a $1,000 risk-free first bet plus a free 3-month subscription to The Athletic. Just sign up at BetMGM.com/TA-fantasy to take advantage of this special offer. BetMGM.com/TA-fantasy. This is a new customer offer paid out in bonus dollars. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. All right, guys, let's account ourselves each about 1 minute for this next topic. Then we'll get to our Guess That Player payoff, and then we'll be done. Rule tweaks. All three of us are among the many people participating in the Scott Fish Bowl, which has a number of different fun, for the most part, rules that we would normally see in a fantasy football league. So I thought we could all talk about some of our favorite rule tweaks. Brandon, you went last on the first one. How about you go first here? What's a rule tweak you would recommend to our listeners that could spice up their fantasy league?
I like adding rules that are valuable in real life football. You know, in real life, turnovers are huge, and we all already account for that in fantasy football. But moving the chains and big plays, explosive plays. So rewarding points for moving the chains with first downs is something that we've incorporated in my league, and I think it's a good add-on. Where a lot of frivolous additions that are just stupid because people want to get more points. I think first downs is meaningful, and I also think big plays of 20 plus, 40 plus yards, especially scoring plays, depending on your platform that you use. Some allow it for just straight yardage plays that aren't scoring. Some make it a scoring bonus on big plays. Whatever you're able to do, I think it's fair to put some value into adding points for that as well.
Yeah, I like that. I'm a fan. I don't typically love yardage bonuses. I think points for first downs is an interesting way to rejigger some of the ways we value players. Jake, of course, hates it. I know one thing Jake and I both don't like is tight end premium. I can't stand tight end premium. I think.
I wrote an article about that. But as I preface the article for tight end premium, as I'll preface what I'm about to say of why I don't like first down point, like what play how you want to play. Like
That's
Brandon
very true. I agree with that for sure.
Before we went to this new week 18. Play how you want to play. I don't like points for first down the same reason I don't like full point PPR. I don't see a 1 yard run on third down being more valuable than the 9 yards it took to get there.
How about points per success rate run?
Well, let me just say, I play in a league that does full point PPR or like 3/4 point PPR, and we do 1/4 point first down. I'm a big fan of decimals. We do 4.5 points for a passing touchdown. Like, why not? If you got decimal scoring,
well, that's what I was going to say, Brandon. If you want to look at my home, you said more points. People like more points. I've said that a million times. Sure. If you want artificial points, not to say artificial, stop with artificial. Use real. So my home league, this isn't my most favorite rule change, but it's 1.5 points for 10 yards, 1.5 points for 25 yards passing, because yards then, you start to push away the luck of touchdowns, and you get more points for what should be most valued is yards. And also the one thing you didn't mention too is we also do yards allowed for defenses, which a lot of sites don't do, because that's more telling too. But my favorite, goes back to the first time I ever met Adam Ronis over 10 years ago. Double headers, one against your opponent, one of the top 6 scorers or 5, depending on how many the top half of the league scoring gets an extra win. The bottom of the league gets the extra loss. If you're the second highest scoring team, worst case scenario, you go 1-1. By the time you get to the playoffs, you generally have the best 5, if not 6 teams. And it just helps eliminate some of that luck while you're sitting there and like looking at the scoreboard going, I just lost 120 and 115. This box score is 90 to 88. F those dudes. This is double headers, I think, is one of the best things anybody can do.
I love doubleheaders too, and I love this more as I think this is a better way to even out the luck in the standings rather than awarding a playoff spot based on points scored. But awarding a playoff spot based on points scored is fine, but I think if that's what you're going for, doubleheaders I think is just a better fix than going.
And there's variations like victory points and stuff like that. There's like variations of it out there.
It's not usually one team that's getting screwed. It's more than that.
Right.
So if you have that one wild card spot for the high score, there's still, probably multiple teams that are getting screwed over.
Yeah, I absolutely love doubleheaders. I love it. It's just a fun way to do it and to even things out a little bit. I think another fun way to even things out a little bit happens once you get to the playoffs, and that's where we're going to find my rule tweak. How often have you been the number 1 seed in your playoffs and you get a bye in the first round, and then you're matched up against someone who was the 6th seed to make the playoffs, but they had the second most points in the league, and they come in, they win their first round matchup, and now you as the 1 seed have to play someone who's probably the second best team in the league just to get to your fantasy championship. It sucks. We all see it happen, and it kind of sucks. So something I like to do, something we do in my home league, let's let the top seed in each playoff round choose who they play among whoever's available. So if it's a 16 playoff, top 2 get buys, the 3 seed gets to pick any of the other 3 teams that they want to play. Then those teams move on. The 1 seed gets to pick anyone who they want to play. It gives you a little bit of trash talking material as well. Oh, you want to play me? Now I'm going to take you out. It's a lot of fun and a way that also evens things out once we get to the playoffs. So that's something that I like to try to incorporate in leagues where where people are amenable to it.
I don't mind that. In my home league, there's no seeding. So top 4, play, or like the 2 buys and then the 4 left play. The 2 scores advance. Next round, 2 scores advance, and then the championship game is head to head.
It's like your double header rule, but you throw out the head
to
head and just
you throw out the head to head.
Yeah.
And then actually that helps sometimes Monday night still be interesting, because you could have, the 4th scoring team instead of a head to head could be dead and have nothing left or whatever. That game might be over, whereas you still have something for Monday night too. So just another variation of that.
Always fun to find great rules in fantasy leagues, right? We've been playing this game for so long, and so many of the rules have become entrenched that we don't think about them. But, take some time to think about them. We might be able to spice up your league in a way that you like. Let's wrap things up here, guys. We got one more clue, and then we'll pay off Guess That Player, and we'll talk about him for a little bit. So, clue number 3. I'll put it up on the screen first. I have been a top 12 quarterback in 4 of my 6 seasons as a starter. That is true. I'll give you a bonus. Top 5 quarterback twice this guy has been. So this guy.
Wait, he's only played 6 seasons?
No, as a starter. He played behind RG3 for a couple of years.
That was okay.
He might have played by RG3. Really quick, let me just go over these clues.
Why can't
one of 6 quarterbacks with 2 top 24 wide receivers by ADP. The only one who is not among the top 12 quarterbacks of those 6. And finally, a top 12 quarterback in 4 of 6 seasons. He's also been a top 5 quarterback twice. Who is it, guys? Jake, you got it?
I got it Cousins, but I'm like, can you see the Cousins? It's
it's got like a halo going.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't think that's what you did.
Hold on a second. Can I black out my computer screen?
There you go. Try it now. It looks like it's darker. Oh yeah.
There it is. Kirk Cousins.
There it is.
Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, you guys, there's some cognitive dissonance in his ADP, isn't there? I mean, I know he doesn't run.
Could you see it?
Yes, we could see it there.
Okay.
He doesn't run, and we want our quarterbacks to run, but Justin Jefferson, top 7 wide receiver by ADP. Adam Thielen, top 20, top 22 wide receiver by ADP. Dalvin Cook, great in the receiving game. A consensus number 2, maybe number 3, certainly top 3 pick. And here we've got Kirk Cousins as QB 16. I know he doesn't run, but I mean, feels like something's got to be off. Either Kirk Cousins is going to be better than QB 16, or like Adam Thielen's going to be wide receiver 40, something like that.
Let me just say something here. Teddy Bridgewater, Ben Roethlisberger. Go look at the rankings of 3 receivers on their team last year, and then go look at the rankings of the quarterback.
Where they finished.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't always work out that way.
No, what I'll say too on Kirk Cousins is if you look at his points per game, the biggest thing with Kirk Cousins is also he's playing 16 games every damn year. Like that's the biggest thing. You have guys, if you look at points per game, actually, I'll even pull it up. Like, where did he finish points per game last year? And I think that's the bigger thing is we're trying not to QB 14. Not as far as I thought he would have fallen, but QB 14 still is what you mentioned is he doesn't run. What's the difference between Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins? They do it all the time. They can hit QB1, but they have to throw. And you take that away, like that is why I go back to the Jalen Hurts is why I'd rather just wait on Hurts than take Tom Brady because Tom Brady went ballistic last year for Tom Brady. Yeah. And not saying he can't again, but even if he's 90% Tom Brady, now he goes from QB 10 to QB 16 just like that.
It is a good thing to keep in mind that Tom Brady had that season he had last year, 40 touchdowns, 4,600 yards. He also ran for 3 touchdowns and was still QB 7. I mean, can you imagine as recently as like 2013 what a 40 touchdown, 4,600 yard quarterback would be in the fantasy ranking? Be QB1, almost without question. Maybe there's someone else who's just as good as him, maybe QB2.
And per game, he was QB 10. You take away 5 touchdowns, which sounds like aggressive, but is it really? He still throws for 35.
Still throws for 35, yeah.
You drop him to QB 12.
Yeah, we love rushing. We love rushing at this quarterback position. Something we don't love rushing is rushing through this show. We just gave you a solid hour on this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. So thanks for sticking with us here on YouTube, whether we're just maybe in your ears also on Spotify, Apple, wherever the case might be. Thank you for sitting here and listening with us. We hope you enjoy. We hope you'll be back with us next week because me, Brandon, and Jake certainly will be right back here talking much more fantasy football 1 week from now. Until then, thank you for listening. Have a great day. We'll talk to you later on the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast.